program of the 2019 Sawtooth Forum and Lecture Series. We've been doing this, I think, 11 or 12 years now, and better received every year. We love having a beautiful crowd like this. For those who don't know me, I'm Gary Gadwa, past president of the Sawtooth Brotherhood Historical Association. My wife and I have been members of the association since 1979. Let me begin by mentioning our primary sponsors. Redfish Lake Lodge, the McNichol family. Thank you so much, and thank you for being here today. Also, we have the Forum and Lecture Series attendees, often our board members. And so I want to see if there's any board members here today besides me. I think there is. There's one, there's two, three. Okay, we got some board members here. And we're always looking for members, so I'll throw that out right off the bat. If you aren't a member, who all is a member of the Seahawks? There you go. Gotta love it. Okay, but we do have membership brochures, and if you picked up one of the flyers, that would help you if you want to join. We are a 501c3, so your donations are greatly accepted and are deductible. Our mission is to protect and advance the cultural and natural history of the Sawtooth Salmon River country through preservation and education. We think that the Forum and Lecture Series is one of our best ways to educate and preserve what we have here. We also have our World History program, and we have the awesome Redfish Visitor Center where most of our naturalists work. The naturalists and the folks from the museum are here today. Our programs are mostly funded by book and map sales at our outlets. We also rely on some donations and grants, but most especially from memberships. We'd love to have you join our group. I'll quickly mention we have a brand new thing over here. It's called a dip jar. If you have your credit card, you can make a $5 donation to Seahawk very, very simply. That's the latest technology. It even uses a cell phone, which I
Wow, we live in good times.
So, and we also have a drawing this year for our adventure pack. Our adventure pack, it's all full of goodies, and you can get one ticket for $5 or $5 or $20 will give you 5 tickets. The drawing will be on August 31st. Before I turn it over to Emma to introduce Joe Leonard, I want to mention the pathway to the Sawtooth Valley history here. I just this past week added 27 more bricks, and we can add your brick to this memorial pathway.
What's that going to cost me?
You can get a 4x8 brick for $100 or 8x8 brick for $250. There are now 145 donations on this pathway, and so we're encouraging folks, if you don't have a brick, to see one of our members, and we can get you lined up with a brochure to get a brick. And it's been a raving success, so I'm going to say that our Sawtooth Valley path to your history is right here in front of you. I hope you enjoyed it when you walked in. Our awesome speaker, Joe Leonard. We've been friends for 40 years now, and there's folks here that have known him even longer than I have. And
My guy just had to interrupt, sorry. Tom and I know you for what, 89? I'm younger than you are, son. We're the oldest guys in the valley.
so, Emma, you got it.
Yes, thank you all for coming to our second series. In our 2019 series. The 2019 lecture series will focus on adventures, stories, and experiences we all can have while we're here in the Sawtooth. Tonight's presenter, Joe Leonard, is an Idaho living legend. He will give a presentation about his pioneering outdoors exploits starting way back in the 1960s. The area of 3 pin findings, leather knickers, gaiters, and wool socks. He will address what the wilderness and all that Idaho skiing, kayaking, and climbing has meant to him, including the spiritual benefits of a life spent in the wilderness. And as a gifted writer, Joe's memoir, Son of Madam of Mustang Ranch, National Outdoor Books Award. So please welcome Joe Leonard with A Journey into the Sawtooth Wilderness.
They're old friends. Well, for a long time. All right, folks, I got to tell you that it was in the spring of 1974, and we hadn't gone more than a couple of miles when I saw a man on the bank of the river waving at us frantically. Like a covey of quail, we started paddling in his direction, and when we got closer to the bank, this guy starts yelling at us. He says, "Where in the hell do you think you're going?" Now this is in Shoup, Idaho in 1974. We're going to float. We said exactly this: we're floating to Riggins. Well, in spring of 1974, the snow in these mountains is horrendous, and it was coming down very fast. First day of global warming, I think. So he says, "The hell you say? Are you crazy? This river is flowing at over 100,000 CFS." Now that's at Shoup, Idaho. That's more than 100,000 cubic feet of water flowing out in that river every second. He said 4 people on a commercial guided trip died in that river yesterday. And he's trying to scare me, I think, and I did get a little frightened. He said, and they were in tandem rubber rafts. What they've done is brought a Colorado river rafts to run that big water, and they tied 2 of them together. They're 20 feet wide, 30 feet long, with the motor, he says. How the hell do you think you're going to get down that river in those stinking little boats? It looks like you could do real well out on the lake somewhere, if it's quiet. Well, I looked back at him, and I said, "We'll be fine. I've been kayaking for 2 years now." Walt Blackadar got me started back in 1970. He taught me how to roll a kayak, laying on his rug in his living. You know Black Walt? How many know Black Walt? The primo kayaker, starting back in the 70s. So he taught me how. So I knew it would be fine. Blackadar taught me. And he said, "Look, I don't have the authority to stop you, but if you insist on this insanity, all I can do is have you sign this paper, and it says you're suicidal, and you're going to go down this river even if it kills you." And with a bit of trepidation, me and my 3 buddies, we all signed it, and we paddled out into the river. Now, even in those days, I was no stranger to peril. I had been climbing on mountains and skiing, and kayaking started kayaking, and I had been in danger before. But in about 10 seconds, 30 seconds going down the river, it started to drop, and I knew I was getting into something I had no business in. But we had embarked. There was no turning back. There was going to be very little scouting rapids, and we were committed. And not. About 45 minutes later, I see a huge wall of water hitting a rock, a big rock, like a cliff. And around the other side, there was something you couldn't see. So I decided, with my partners, we talked about it as we're floating down to it. And they said, "Which way are you going to go, Joe?" And I said, "I'm taking the wave. I don't know I know that devil, but I don't know the ones behind that rock." So I take off, and I go up this thing, and there's a big curling mass of water that just, I don't know where it comes flying at me. It knocks me completely backwards. I start surfing backwards. End up in an eddy with exploding, I got some words water exploding sky high as the turbulence was so was all around me. Whirlpools would take my boat and suck me down, spit me out. And this is going on and for quite a while. And I can't get out of it. I'm stuck in this darn eddy because I couldn't paddle across it. It was just this. I was always bracing the paddle to keep myself upright. And then, from behind, this whirlpool catches me, and it does this with my boat, and it starts sucking me down, down, and down. And my memories started spinning in my head. Now, you won't believe that, but believe me, it's true. I thought this was the end. I really did. But it blew me back up in the air, and I landed upside down, and I learned a lot in that eddy. I found out, which I thought I knew a lot, but what I found out in that eddy is that water is either sucking one side or the other of the boat down at a time, so you're constantly bracing. And you flip over a lot. And then it's turbulence you can't see, but I recognized if you kept your eyes open and you looked up, the minute the light hit, you could see the light in the water. If you took your paddle and flipped it and rolled up, it was easy. If you tried to roll up and when you were in the wave, nothing happened. So I learned that. But the memories became important, and I'm gonna, well, I guess I could finish that story. My wife, where is she? She's not smiling. Anyway, I figured out that the only way out of that eddy was to fight my way to the top of it because the water there was going back into the river. And I paddled like a wild man, finally made it to that water that was coming down and back into the river. And I thought it was going to be, this is great, I'm here, and that water's going to take me whether I want to go or not. I ended up hitting a wall of water that was 4 feet high, and the boat just snapped around and back in the eddy again. And I thought, this was it. I said, this, you got it. But I learned another thing. You have a wall of water beside you. If you're paddling out in this rough stuff, you're having a hard time. But I stuck my paddle in the river, the current, and it shot me like a bullet. I mean, it just took me off, and I flew across the eddy, basically, landed in the current going back upstream. And this time, I said, I got to do something better because I can't go back through this again. So I hit that wall of water, and then I threw my body into the wall of water, stuck my paddle into the current, and hung on. And son of a gun drug me right out of there. And we survived it, by the way. That's what they say, isn't it? Yeah. So it's really hard to go back in time and describe what it was like in the Sawtooth and White Cloud Mountains 50 years ago. That's a long time. Stanley was still a hidden realm of the Old West. The road, can you hear me, everybody? The road from Boise to Stanley was a 2-lane dirt road, closed in the winter. Piro Piva, the rancher, drove his cattle through Stanley and down this road to Chalice every fall, and every spring he brought them back. That's what life was like. A stranger drive into town, you had to go find out who he was, or she was. And the winter was bad for that. Oh, and the cowboys in Stanley would ride their horses into the saloons, waving their guns in the air, and threatening shooting, but they didn't drink. When folks ran short of supplies here, they would either go over to the summit to Galena to get supplies or over to Chalice to get stuff. They usually had a freezer full of fish and elk and deer, and none of them poached, by the way.
Yeah, right.
Redfish. Spawned and tinged Redfish Lake with color, and Chinook salmon were so plentiful in the Salmon River, you could walk across their back if they would stay still long enough. It was every young person's paradise. It was a dream to be here, and it was so unbelievable because you knew everybody. It was the most wonderful thing in the world. 30 years ago, I wrote a speech for a bunch of attorneys in Boise Cascade They asked me to give it here in the basin for them. They were having a retreat. And I wrote this poem. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? No?
Yes.
Well, you know, I got hearing aids. I'll talk louder. Right. Oh, I see. Real close. Real close. Even I can hear me. So I want to read a poem I wrote for that speech because it was. I was 50 at the time, so you'll get the drift of that. This poem was written when I was 50 years old, and that you'll have to transfer time because now I'm 80, so it's a little bit different. But I was born in the Sawtooth Mountains on Deer Creek. Thank you. Excuse me. Some other tricks too, if you want to see them. I was born in the Sawtooth Mountains. I was born in the Sawtooth Mountains on Deer Creek above Air Rock Dam. That's the other side of the mountain. And I was raised by my grandma, a woman in love with the land. My grandma was strong as they come. The same thing here is going crazy. As strong as they come, a courageous old gal and a darn good friend of mine. In one rough hand, she would hold me, and the other she would hold a stick to beat rattlers to death with. They were that thick on that side of the mountain. She didn't take me from off her knee until death she did dare. And I lost that page. She didn't take me from off her knee till death she did. My grandmother was as strong as a crown, a courageous old gal, and that's it. She was rugged and true with eyes of blue, a woman that nothing could scare, and she didn't take me from off her knee until death she did dare. The first time I saw this side of the Sawtooth, I was but a boy of 7. No rattlesnakes here, and the mountain so high. I knew I'd found heaven. I had no idea at that time it was a place of such beauty, and I vowed someday that no matter the way, for me to live here was my duty. Well, I didn't get here for many a year until it came the time to turn 30, and then came the call of the mountain so tall, and I left the city so gritty. I'm one of the Sawtooth Brotherhood, and I see a lot of my brothers here. I'm one of the Sawtooth Brotherhood. I'm an old-time pioneer. Oh God, how I have cursed these mountains, but I'm still here. My nights are filled with dreams of days before maps to tell where you are. I remember the day when I came to this valley in a place called Robinson Bar. On a creek named Warm Springs, at the mouth of the river where the salmon used to spawn, Robinson Bar was a dude ranch, but now, like a dream, it's long gone. My partners were John Ferry, Nancy Reynolds. You may know these names. My partners were John Ferry, Nancy Reynolds, and Bill Norris, too. They were all Idahoans, city folk, though. They were all Idahoans through and through. Now, those three left the wilds for the lure of fame and gold. Some say they were the wiser. I stayed on to toil in the cold. Working in the Sawtooth Mountains was not a prosperous trade. John Ferry left to become president of Boise Cascade. Nancy Reynolds rode to the White House to make Ronald Reagan's day. Bill traded Robinson Bar for the city to seek its fortune and find truth. I stayed with the mountains and rivers, never fearing the loss of my youth. I was one of the bunch, and I got a hunch that my time spent here was the best, but this guiding is only a gamble, and I'm due for a good long rest. I've swallowed my dreams by 1,000 streams. I've toiled and tried to be bold. I've lived the magic of these mountains. I've frozen and shivered in the cold. Look at my nose, it's as red as a rose, and my toes are all black and frost burnt. And this scar on my left arm, you'd think of someday I'd have learned. Each one, though, is a brand of this awesome land where I've played and I've lost the game. A broken wreck with a craze for booze and never a cent to my name. In the early days, there were just a few. We hunted and fished around. We dreamt by our lonely campfires of the wealth that we had thrown down. We traded the life of plenty to live just asleep in an open glade on the banks of Goat Creek, where the first ski camp was laid. We were just like a great big family, and everyone had their rope. We lived a wild, free, and fearless life out on the mountain slope. Then, one night, there came a rumor, and it maddened us every one. We heard it at Casanova's. The tourist rush had begun. Oh God, those Stanley days amid the sin and the gin and the town all crazy wild. It was never a place for the meek, the weak, or the mild. Oh, money was hard to find here, not easy to get and little to spend. I got stuck on a casino barmaid, and I won her in the end. That's the woman that keeps yelling at me. We married in the meadow just outside town. The mayor of Stanley wed us, laid his words upon us as we watched the sun go down. Now things were fine for a considerable time. I laid down that devil's brew, till by chance I found myself in an avalanche, all churned up in the stew. My friends dug like wild men trying to find my carcass under the snow. I heard one shout just before he dug me out. I found him. I found old Joe. 20 years in the Sawtooth, struggling along its creeks, roaming its mountain meadows, climbing its godlike peaks. 20 years in the Sawtooth. And excuse me, let me do that one again. 20 years in the Sawtooth, struggling along its creeks, roaming its mountain meadows, climbing its godlike peaks, bathing in its fiery sunsets, fighting its fiendish cold. All those years in the Sawtooth, all those years, and I'm old. Now I've been trying to leave here for near a year and go and head for the city below. Leave these cursed mountains, leave these rivers crazed, leave, just let these mountains go. But I can't leave now, if I tell myself I'm too old, too tired, and too beat. So I sit alone while the sun goes down, and I say the words again. In the morning, I'll go in the morning, when the mountains turn to red. Now, this small town Stanley, like many others in the West, was suspicious of strangers. Clayton, just downriver, we were talking about that earlier, like many others in the West, was suspicious of strangers as well. It was a small mining town back in the day. It sits in a canyon so narrow and deep that in the winter months the sun comes up around 3 in the afternoon and sets at 3:30. The people who lived in Clayton's in those days were miners who worked underground all day, and they rarely saw the sun anyway, so it didn't matter so much. An old friend and I were passing through, John Zapp and I were passing through Clayton early one winter morning after failing in our attempt to climb Castle Peak in the White Cloud Mountains. It was in 1967, and Clayton consisted of a post office, a bar, of course, and an old hotel that didn't amount to a hill of beans that was about to fall over. So we stopped, it was morning, we stopped to get, the post office was open, so we went in and asked the postmistress where we could get a cup of coffee and some breakfast. And with a slight smile on her face, she turned and said, "Go across the street, go down the stairs." And so we did. We came to the door at the bottom of the stairs, opened it, and were stunned by the volume of noise that came out of that room. And how many people, there was stuffed with people. It was really unbelievable. So, as the door, the hush fell in the rooms. That started one by one as each person turned their head to the door and laid their eyes on us. No one lifted the bottle of whiskey or the beer that they held against their chest. it was too late for us to turn back. It was kind of like that river trip. And as the door closed behind us, everyone started stepping back. I felt a little like Moses must have felt when he parted the Dead Sea. And they cleared a path all the way to the bar with us. And the lone bartender was looking down the aisle at us like we were the first strangers he'd seen since the Roaring '20s. People sitting at tables all stood to get a better look at us. Their eyes were roaming from our ski boots to our knickers and our long wool socks. And I got to the bar and ordered a beer. I wasn't going to have a coffee because I don't think there was anything on the menu you could eat. So I got a beer, a whiskey I wanted. John got a beer. He was, he never got tipsy, and he was smart. But the bartender laid his big callous hands on the bar, and he kind of looked at us and he said, "What do you want?" I said, "I'll have a whiskey, please." So we picked up our drinks and turned. Now the crowd at that point were all standing and all staring at us, and they still had their drinks in hand. They never parted with that. About that time, on the corner of the room, another door opened, and the whole crowd started opening another aisle. And I was wondering, who could that guy be? And finally, a little guy comes out of the crowd through the separation, and he wasn't very big at all, just a little guy. I kind of looked at him. He was looking right in my eye. As he got nearer, he began to swagger a little bit, and I thought, well, my mind struggled to grasp the situation. Who was this guy? He was taking his time as he appraised us coming on, and as if he was trying to sort out what he was seeing against all the possibilities who we might be. He closed in on me, and as he approached, his eyes never left mine. He stopped close enough that I could smell the whiskey on his breath. And he said, "What in the hell are you?" He didn't say, "Who are you?" He said, "What are you?" It took me a minute or two to figure out. I had something I never thought about, What am I? Silence kind of reigned around us as I pondered the question. He stepped back away from me, breaking the silence, and provided some suggestions. "Hippie?" He paused. I leaned back. He said, "Queer?" I paused again. He paused again, and I paused too. And then he said, "Or mountaineer?" Now, hippie, queer, mountaineer left me no welcome choice. The mountaineer could be one of those damned environmentalists. So I kind of looked back at him, I kind of stuttered a little bit, and finally I said, "Mountaineer?" He took his hat off his head, turned around, looked at the crowd, and he said, "It's all right. It's all right. They're mountaineers." The whole crowd, everybody in the room started piling us up around it. And they were asking question after question. "What mountain are you climbing? This time of year? Are you crazy?" It finally got to the point where, well, a couple of young miners, girls, I don't know how they were, but they started making eyes at John. And I said, "John, I think we better get out of here." We'd struck a friendship, so in a very unlikely place, sharing stories about the dangers of climbing mountains and the dangers of tunneling under them. We're sharing common ground, so to speak. We ordered one last drink, smiled at the two young ladies, and left. The mountains were pristine in those days. You could drink the water without a thought. There was no problem.
I think it's the back.
Come back. There you are. Thank you. If you got hurt, or we followed mountain trails by hash marks that the Forest Service guys had cut in the trees. If you got hurt in those days, or you lost the trail, your life was in the hands of fate, not your cell phone. So in December of 1966, my climbing partner, John Zapp, and I left for Stanley in the Sawtooth Mountains to make the first winter ascent of Mount Reagan. In those days, backcountry skis and 3-pin bindings were not available in the United States. They had them in Europe. You could go to Europe and ski on them, but not here. So we were in a position deciding whether we were going to use alpine skis and skins or snowshoes. And we finally decided that alpine skis will at least get us out of there faster. We went to the bar. Where am I? Oh. Okay, in those days, yeah, okay, and it was late Friday night when we pulled up to the Stanley Club. It seemed as if the whole town were there waiting, which wasn't saying much. I think the population was 40 or 50. And we went into the bar and we ordered our drinks, and 2 locals bellied up beside us, one on each side. And this one here looked over and he said, "You're the first strangers we've seen in town since I can remember." He said, I'm Tom Kovalik, and this is Bill James. I'm the forest ranger here, and Bill James is my assistant. Well, Tom then began to question us. He asked us what the devil we were doing here, and we told him we were here to climb Mount Reagan. Bill's response was, "Mount Reagan, the hell you say?" He said, "No one has climbed that mountain in winter. It's in the middle of the Sawtooths, for God's sakes." Tom added that the storm was coming in and asked how we planned on getting to that mountain. We thought we'd ski in. Bill was gassed. His face blew up and bright red. His eyes were bigger than saucers. He said, "Ski in? It's all uphill." Are you guys nuts? Tom's response was much more eloquent. He said, "Well, I guess it'd be all right if they know what they're getting into." And Bill then came over and he said, "Do you know what you're getting into? Have you done this before?" Bill was aghast and told us when we got into trouble, not if we got into trouble. They would have to be the ones come looking for us. And Tom finally said, "Well, it's a free country." And John commenced to give him a short resume. He said, "I climbed and skied in the Alps while I lived there. I'm the head ski coach for the College of Idaho and have climbed all over the Sawtooth Mountains in the summertime." And then Tom looked at me and said, "How about you?" And I said, "Well, I've climbed in Yosemite, the Sierras, and Mount Shasta last winter. I thought it best to leave the story of the Martians out of that one." They stepped away from the bar and walked off from us, and I couldn't hear a word they were saying, but their body language spoke volume, arms flailing, heads shaking, and carrying on back there. When they came back, Tom asked what we would think if they pulled us into the Creek trailhead behind the snow machines. And we said, that's a great idea. We really love that. So the next morning, our goal was to be at Sawtooth Lake before dark on that same day, where we would build a snow cave. The next morning we'd climb Reagan at first light. Excuse me. We met at the Sawtooth Hotel the next morning, and we're at the trailhead in no time. So when we started out, the sky was heavy and low. It wasn't long before it was snowing quite hard, and with each inch of snow that fell, the trail breaking required much more energy. And the equipment in those days was awful. Alpine skis and ski boots were heavy, and when you put skins on them, it was like pulling a dead cow with every step. It was just before dark when we finally found our way to Alpine Lake, the ridge above it. We were 2 miles from our goal at that point, and the storm had turned into a blizzard. And we were literally exhausted. We really didn't have to go on, didn't want to go on, couldn't go on breath. so we decided to make camp. The ridge was windblown. There wasn't enough room for a snow cave or snow for a snow cave, but there was enough for a trench that would keep us somewhat protected from blowing wind and snow. It felt like hours before I finally fell asleep, and when I awoke, I was dreaming that somebody was throwing ice water in my face. And I sat up real abruptly and wondered what was going on. It was so black you couldn't see a thing, but I realized it was raining. It was raining. That's 7,000 feet in one of the coldest mountain ranges in North America. And so the worst part was we didn't plan on that. We didn't bring any rain gear. Gore-Tex hadn't been invented yet. John, I called. John, I got it. It's raining. He said, I know. He said, I thought I was hallucinating. I think we should pack up and move on. We'll get a little, if we get high enough, we may get out of this rain into a nice, pleasant blizzard. Well, that made perfectly good sense to me, because I was a little bit terrified of my situation. Anything to get out of it would serve me just fine. But about that time, we could hear the avalanches starting to break loose all around it. It was about 9 o'clock at night when we finally got our gear all packed up. We couldn't put our sleeping bags in the packs because they were solid water, but we had to keep them. So we started off. So here we were, trying to get high enough to get out of this rain, and we didn't get very far. The wet snow on top of dry, cold snow was turning our skins into iced stilts, and we were a little taller, Each foot was a little heavier and a little heavier, and we couldn't go on. We couldn't go on at that point, and we decided to turn back. So we started skiing down this ridge line, got off into the trees, and about then the sky cleared. And the temperature just went like a rocket. It just started plummeting. And it wasn't long before our clothes were frozen. Everything, every time we moved, it would snap and pop and crack. And I was getting a little bit scared, you might say, because our lives were in peril. But we continued on, pushing one ski ahead of the other, and then the other, and moving like old men in a trance. But in this state, like trance, I was stopped out of my stupor by a voice. It was not John's voice. It was a woman's voice. She said, "He watches over the lost and wandering." And I almost instantly had this sensation of power and hope, and that everything was going to be fine. And I turned around and looked at John to see if he had heard the voice, and I could tell by the look on his face that he didn't hear it. So, well, that was all she said. But her voice had lifted my spirits and replaced fear with hope, believe it or not, and my skis moved with less effort, and I wasn't as cold. Now that could be a figment of my imagination, but that certainly seemed. John must have wondered what happened to me. I knew he could feel my energy, but he didn't say anything, and I didn't tell him about the voice. I figured, he'll think I've gone crazy. Lost my mind. It was almost midnight when we reached the road at Iron Creek. The sky was clear and it was filled with stars, and from their glow you could see well. And what I saw was wandering. Were snowmobile tracks. Tom and Jim, your partner, I love James, yeah, thank you, had come looking for us on their snow machines. and they had come before the snow got cold. While it was still wet, they had packed it as hard as concrete, and we had a 2-foot wide toboggan run. Help for the lost and wandering? I wonder. All you had to do is stand in it and go down the trail. It's just the most easy thing. You know, finally we get to the highway. We got 5 or 6 miles to go yet. And I was pretty confident we were going to make it at that point. Then, Help for the Lost and Wandering came out of Stanley with 2 lights on the front of their car. And they drove out. It was Tom and Bill. They come looking for us again. And we got in their car. He turned the heater up. And we... Let me see where I'm at here. More equipment than I can stand. After 3 winters attempting to summit Mount Reagan and failing each time, all good stories by the way, on the last day of winter of 1970, on a beautiful blue sky day, we were the first to reach the summit of Mount Reagan. And so much easier, and we had 3 pen bindings. And later on I read a book called Men Who've Walked with God. And at some point during their perilous journeys, alone, many of them claimed they had the voice as well. And her voice, they said that her voice had guided them and gave them courage to go on when they thought they could go no longer. Her name, found out, was Sophia, probably. Well, I never doubted that voice I heard that night. My excursions into the mystical, I don't use many drugs, but hearing voices, experiencing the power of prayer, and for an instant experiencing separation from mind from body. It is considered by some to be delusional, but not for me. They have all given me gifts. I believe they're gifts given by a greater power propelling me. If I have been delusional, I would rather that than live a life filled with fear, denial, and little hope, or to experience the loneliness of those who are so blind, or blind so much of life. I became a mountain guide in 1970. In the early years, we started the first guide service for backcountry skiing and kayaking in Idaho. In 1972, we held the about the 72.
Can't hear.
Oh, you can't? Hello? Anyways, 1972, we held the first whitewater rodeo on the Salmon River. All of those activities have grown and flourished in every mountain range in the United States, and kayak rodeos, which we started there, are now all around the world. So it really caught on. It was a lot of fun. When I began climbing and kayaking, it was for me in the beginning a purely physical challenge, a test of courage to find out what I was capable of. With each new experience, I became more aware that there was also a spiritual aspect of my journey, and only through understanding who I was physically, mentally, and spiritually would I ever be able to know myself. The mountains provided that pathway for me, at least, and really made my life very interesting. The wilderness, with its mountains and rivers and skies, have always been my touchstone, my beacon and savior throughout all of my adventures, wherever they have taken me. My quest for spiritual understanding always stood above all. One of my early heroes was Chief Luthor Standing Bear of the Lakota Sioux. He spoke of the Native Americans' culture and its respect for nature. I discovered his words many years ago, and I've never forgotten them. He loved the earth and all things of the earth. This I'm quoting him. The attachment growing with age. The old people came to love the soil and the earth with a feeling of being close to a mothering presence. The old Lakota was wise. They knew that man's heart away from nature becomes hard. They knew that lack of respect for growing living things soon led to lack of respect for humans as well. So he kept his youth close to its softening influence. Now, I believe that nature's softening influence is something we desperately need, especially in today's world. More than ever, we need wilderness. The battle to protect the wildernesses of Idaho was becoming a political issue in my early years. Senator Frank Church sold the family ranch, Robinson Bar, in order not to avoid conflict of interest in trying to save the White Cloud Mountains. Cecil Andrus, the governor of Idaho, was a strong conservationist. There are a lot of dedicated, passionate people who have worked in Idaho's wilderness, and I'm assuming there's quite a number of you are in that category. I know some of you are for sure. We owe them all a great debt. Idaho would be quite different without their leadership. Yet the fight for wilderness goes on, and those of us who carry that banner must be vigilant. Each here this evening has a voice that must be heard in protecting what we have inherited. In his dying hour, Crowfoot of the Blackfoot people, a brave warrior and eloquent spoke of life. What is life? Quoting again, what is life? It's the flash of a firefly in the night. It is the breath of a buffalo in the wintertime. It is the little shadow which runs across the grass and loses itself in the sunset. Well, I'm 80 years old this year, I think. Is that what it says? Yeah. And the older I get, the more meaningful those words become. I'd kind of like to finish this evening reading the prologue of my memoir that was written, The Son of the Madam of Mustang Ranch, was written by my son John, who also was born and raised in the Sawtooth Mountains. He's now living in Sardinia, Italy. He has a picture of the Sawtooth hanging in his living room. That remind him of his roots. This is what he wrote. The wilderness is a mirror, as anyone knows who has passed some 2 hours in its company, and one must have the strength in those silent moments and silent and profound spaces to gaze honestly upon oneself. When one can do this, and even for a few minutes, rend asunder the veils of falsity that so commonly enshroud our lives, one perchance sees through to a richer vein of life and a truer mode of being. Thank you, folks. I haven't done this.
Are there any stories relating to Joe? We have a few moments.
Oh, good.
I was kind of thinking of Tom or Dave Kempton. Any stories?
Yeah, way too many. Yeah, my book's, I'm going to write another one. It's going to be a set of encyclopedias, so you'll have plenty of reading material. Some of the stories in my book are, one of the things I have to know about the son of the Madam of Mustang Ranch is my mother was the Madam of Mustang Ranch, and I grew up there. I was a teenager, and she put me to work for her as a security guard, and I ended up lasting a while. But one day I'm walking across the bridge, and an idea comes to me, and I had to carry a gun because there were dangerous people out there in that world. I looked over the river, I took the gun out, and I dropped it, and I went, and I could see it when it hit the bottom of the river. I watched it, and it came along, and I washed over it. That was my last day at Mustang Ranch. Thank you. Any other questions?
Any questions for Joe?
No. I have one for you. Thank you for coming. My wife is never going to